Hi, and welcome back to Mindful Moment Crochet. Today we're going to be reviewing a couple of yarns that I've actually had time to work with a little bit. So I'll show you kind of what it looks like in progress, as well as what it feels like to work with it, as well as kind of going over where it came from, about how much it cost, things like that. The reason I say about is I purchased all these yarns on sale. I'm always going to purchase yarns on sale, unless there's something that just really speaks to my heart. And so a lot of these are maybe more expensive from time to time, might be even cheaper from time to time. So I'll give you a roundabout number of what you can expect. But we will go ahead and hop in with our first one. This is Lion Brand Landscape. Now, I am not necessarily a fan of this yarn. It is a roving type yarn, which kind of creates a yarn that is thicker in some places and thinner in others. This was the project I was working on for my husband, and it was meant to be a blanket. I'm done. I finished this up, and now he has a scarf. So just know that this became not my favorite yarn to work with. I will say the colors are absolutely beautiful. It does almost have like a heavy slinky feel. So I think it could be really luxurious as something like a shawl. So if you are into shawls or anything like that, I think it's worth your time. Now, this is not a join. That is a frayed piece. Maybe it is a join. I don't see a knot. Do I see a knot? That might just be where I wove in my end. Ignore that one. But there were a couple places where the yarn just, it became either too big or too small. The dye lot, these were all purchased at the same time, so I would have to go back and see if the dye lots were the same. But the dye job just created a very bright, it wasn't saturated enough, and so it really sticks out in something that is this dark and almost like jewel tony looking, and so it just doesn't, I think, look very great. I also used the recommended hook size, and it called for a K. I don't think it needs a K. Here you can see this is not a knot. This is not a join. This is just, there was a large kind of yarn gloop that came out together. And so I went ahead and crocheted it in. I think if I were going to go back and do it again, I would cut this out and then rejoin my yarn and keep going. This is not a join, but it is very, you lose your stitch definition. Not that this has super great stitch definition, because it does kind of just have a little bit of some fuzz and haze to it. But it didn't work up the way that I was hoping for it to, which is kind of disappointing, and why I wasn't willing to put in the time to make this into a blanket. The other thing is I used the alpine stitch for this, and because the colors are so saturated, the colors are one of the reasons we bought it. We happen to live up in the mountains, and this particular landscape one, yeah, it's called Mountain Range, so we thought that was pretty on brand for us. But again, it just was not what I was hoping for. Now I do have some of this caked up and ready to go. Again, I had planned on making a much larger project with this. So we'll take a look at kind of what this looks like to work with. It does call, let me verify, it does call for a K, and I will be using a K-size hook here. And again, it's not terrible to get started with. I'll just chain a couple. About 10 chains here. Just go back across with some single crochets. And you can see that first off, calling for a K-size hook, I feel like I would like to go down maybe one, hook size at least. Just so that you get a little bit of a tighter, I feel like this looks loose for a single crochet stitch. I could be wrong, could be biased. I do tend to like tighter fabrics in general, unless I'm just trying to get something to work up fast, of course. I will say it feels fantastic coming across my finger. So it's definitely a yarn that you could work with for a really long time from that perspective. But it's just not something that I think I necessarily just love working with long term. And so for that reason, I'm out. This probably will not be a yarn that I buy. I think this yarn ran me somewhere in the realm of $7 a skein. So to make a blanket out of it, it's also only 147 yards. It's a 100-gram skein. It is 100% acrylic. It's machine wash, gentle, lay flat to dry. Not a fan. Not a fan. I'll admit that. I'm not a fan. Now, I have heard since this one came out, there is a Landscapes Breeze that has gotten some pretty good reviews, if you are interested in checking that one out. But this one, not it for me. The other thing, too, about this type of yarn, so this is, I'm thinking it's a roving type yarn. I would have to double check that. But the likelihood that this is going to pill up and not look particularly great long term is probably pretty high. I mean, the little kind of halo effect that this yarn already gives off isn't necessarily my favorite for durability purposes. Not that everything's about durability, but if I were to make a blanket out of this, it needs to, be able to withstand a dog getting on it, us washing it, things like that. And this is just probably not going to be super practical for those applications. But I would say for something like this as a scarf or as like a shawl, something that's going to be washed less, loved on less, things like that, it could serve a purpose for sure. I will say the stitches come out and you can see I started with some single crochet down here, finish up with some double crochet on the second row so you could see the difference there. Like I said, it is quite airy when you create those double crochets, which is fine, but for that purpose I would probably size down a hook. The single crochets though work up quite beautifully. I actually don't mind the way those look, but since this was the alpine stitch, it's using those double crochets, and for a blanket, I just don't want toes to get caught, so little toesies, little fingers, it's just enough for things to kind of pop through, and that's not necessarily what I like in a blanket. As far as frogging this back, it frogs back beautifully. I don't think you're going to have any issues there. If you have, I jinxed it. There we go. It almost frogs back beautifully. So I would say for this yarn, for my personal use and the things that I can think of that I would enjoy wearing or using with this yarn, I'm probably only going to give it about a 3 out of 5, maybe a 2 out of 5. And so just probably not going to be something that long term I'm going to love using. So I have a lot of these because I bought enough for a blanket. And we'll have to find plan B for these. So I think like something that might be helpful that I might consider using this for is something like a slouchy beanie, or maybe making it into a shawl that isn't meant to be super dense and warm, but more of like a slight fashion statement with a little bit of warmth. We do live in the mountains of North Carolina, and so currently we have about 3 or 4 inches of snow on the ground, and it has been getting down into like the single digits or low double digits during the winter. And so I like usually pretty dense fabrics for wintertime. But this could be something I could see having for maybe the fall. This is pretty beautiful colors. I will say the colorway I don't think can be beaten, which is what definitely amps it up in my mind. But having something like this for fall, a beautiful shawl, maybe to go out to dinner with or something like that, a slouchy beanie, things that aren't going to get like worn a lot, get a lot of wear and tear on, I think that would be a useful application for something like this. All right, moving on to our next one. I'll kind of stash that off to the side for a second here. We have probably one of my favorite yarns that I've tried in a while. All the yarns today are going to be acrylic yarn, and I know people have feelings about acrylic yarn. People want animal fibers or natural fibers, and I love that for people. But this one is a little bit different. So if you are new to acrylic and maybe you've tried Red Heart Super Saver, you probably don't like acrylic. I'm just going to be honest. You are probably in the boat of, it feels terrible coming across my finger. It doesn't work up super soft. I have to wash it with maybe lots of fabric softener to get it to feel better. And I do think that with Red Heart Super Saver, it does get softer. It's still not soft usually, but teach their own and teach their budgets, which is a big thing to be mindful of. I actually think there are some budget-friendly yarns at places like Joann's or Michael's that would be better in that same price point, but we might talk about those later in a future video. So this is DK Colors. It's the anti-pilling line from Premier. Now, speaking of shawls, I made a beautiful pattern for my mother-in-law out of this yarn, and I think it is beautiful. The colors show up super, super well. It has this light sheen. It's almost slinky feeling. I just want to cuddle up with a good book and a blanket made out of this. And I get making a blanket out of a DK weight yarn, you're going to be there for a while. But this yarn is so soft. Because it has a little bit of that slinky feel, it does kind of weigh down. So if you wanted something that is maybe a little bit compression-y, so think about like making something, even holding two strands together, making a nice blanket out of it, I think you could enjoy a really good, cool sensory experience out of a blanket with this held double. I think it would, really create that weight that just kind of compresses down on your body. But that is maybe if you are wanting to really invest in a lot of this yarn. This yarn ran me about $6 per skein. And I love it. I can't really think of a yarn I've tried recently that I like leaps and bounds better than this yarn. This one is really a good candidate for a center pull. I think most of theirs are. And you'll see this one for my next yarn. I really like using, my husband has a 3D printer. And so he makes me these lovely little spindles. So I usually do pull from the outside, but if you have a yarn bowl or something like that, you could definitely pull from the inside, and this one is pretty convenient to do so. This one ran me about $6. Again, Premier had a awesome Black Friday sale, so I know I did not pay that for this. And it's a lot, in my opinion. It's a lot of yarn. So 383 yards, 350 meters, and it's 140 gram skein. So it's a pretty decent amount of yarn, I would say, for the price. And I think I only needed 4 for that full shawl, and it's about 26 inches wide by about, I would say about 80 inches long. I would have to remeasure it just to make sure. So, it doesn't require a whole lot to make something like that. I think it's a pretty economical option if that's what you're looking for. Now this one does require a G. Yes, a G hook. I really like my prim hooks in general. So I will be using that for this particular thing. All right. So again, super slinky to work with, which can make chaining and finding those stitches, oops, a little troublesome at times. So same thing as the last one, I'll do about 10 chains here on the bottom. And working back through. I think this is just beautiful. It does require me to slow down a little bit because it is a smaller yarn. This is a DK weight yarn. And I'm definitely a worsted gal. I prefer a little bit hardier yarns typically, depending on what I'm making. So just know that you might have to slow down and actually look for the stitches. And same thing, we'll do the second row in a little bit of a double crochet here. Go for that last one. And like I said, it works up beautifully. I think it has pretty solid stitch definition. I really don't have much to complain about this yarn, other than I just need to put it on the spindle, which is more user error than anything. But I think when you work up with it, you're going to find that it's beautiful, it's soft, it's slinky, it feels good. The colorways on this are absolutely stunning. And I think it's worth your time if you are willing to consider an acrylic yarn. Like I said, I know people have their feelings about acrylics, but this is not your Red Heart Super Saver. This is definitely a different experience when it comes to crochet. So again, just beautiful, and you can see that sheen in the light. I think it's stunning. One of my favorite yarns. I do have another colorway here. This one hasn't been left on just yet, but I think it's absolutely beautiful. This one has more of those natural, neutral colors. This one is called Strata. This first one, oh, simple teal blue, which is very on brand for that color. So, again, I think it's worth your time, and I just think it's a lovely yarn to work with. But if you are used to bigger yarns, you are going to have to slow down just a little bit. And again, frogging is a breeze. Oh my gosh. So I am going to give this yarn a 5 out of 5. I don't really think I could ask for a softer yarn. It's super easy to work with. Really just a beautiful yarn. All right. The final one for this particular video is going to be tea time. Now, if you happen to see this yarn come back, message me, send out carrier pigeons, whatever. This colorway gets sold out all the time. So I think they will probably carry it till the end of time. But this one is called Tea Time. And this particular colorway is called Darjeeling. All the colorways in this line are based on teas. There's like an Earl Grey, things like that. And with that, I mean, these colors are, you can tell I have a type, right? With these dark, beautiful colors. I just think it's stunning. I don't think that there's a better colorway for me personally, in terms of what I'm going to want to wear or things like that. Now this is an acrylic yarn, and this comes in a massive skein, or massive cake. It is absolutely beautiful though. The color changes are nice. Just can't get enough of it. So this is the Tea Time. Again, looking on the back, it is an acrylic yarn. You get 634 yards. It's a 200-gram skein, so pretty massive there. And it does call for an eye. Now, because I'm actually working on a project to show you this stitch, I have actually sized way down. I am making the hexagranny cardigan, there we go, with it. And I wanted just a little bit of a denser stitch for a little bit of added warmth, but this is still, it's so incredibly soft. I think it's really worth your time in case you want something that's easy to wear. I do think it's wash and lay flat to dry. So just know that you will have to take care of this a little bit differently than some acrylics. And so it might pill. I hope it doesn't, but I can see that this might pill a little bit. But it is just absolutely beautiful. Now, I will say that for my projects in particular, because I'm not using the recommended hook size, I'm not going to hold against it the ability to frog it back. I think that's highly unfair of any product to say I'm using it wrong, why doesn't it work? But this yarn is just so beautiful to work with. So again, making a couple of granny stitches here. And I can't say that I've had, granted I'm making a granny stitch, so I'm not trying to like go in between stitches or things like that with it. But there's just no splitting. It glides. It just is absolutely a breeze to work with. So you can see that it works up well. Hopefully you can see the nice colorway that comes out in it. And it just is a stunner of a yarn. So same thing. I won't frog too much back since I am working on this one. But it does come right back out, even with such a smaller hook than what it calls for. So I don't really have a whole lot of issues. I will say, when I first started this project, I was having issues counting. So I was making a pentagon and not a hexagon. And so when I tried to frog out from this very middle part, after doing a magic ring in the middle, I just had to cut it off, which was a little unfortunate. So when it gets really tight in places like that, especially not if you're sizing down, I don't think you're going to get it apart. That being said, I do think it is a wonderful yarn. And then a little bit of a bigger swatch for you to get an idea. Not that that one wasn't kind of massive, but if we were looking at it in terms of clothing, you can see like it's just beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And so I think this kind of draping off, weaving and in there, but I think this kind of, it just is beautiful. And I think it's going to look great as kind of draping off my body. It is super flexible, which part of that is obviously the granny stitch. But it just is soft and it's lovely, and the colorway, I could not ask for better. So These are a couple yarns that range in price. This one is obviously the biggest, with it being a cake. I think this ran me in the realm of about $10 or $11 for this one. I did get this one on sale. I think regular price is higher. Hobie, I love Hobie. I think they have a wide variety of yarns that are pretty high quality overall. But if you don't get something on sale, this could go all the way up to like 20 something dollars. I've seen it as low as like 10. So it really depends on the sale that you get yarn from Hobie on. That will depend on how much you spend. So just something to keep in mind. I will say, because this particular colorway, if you like it, or if you've started a project and you realize, uh-oh, I'm out, you do kind of have to be at their mercy and buy it when it's available. Because this particular colorway goes fast. I was on their list to notify me. I grabbed up another skein that I needed to complete a project, and it's already out. So if you see this one and you like this colorway, just know that you need to hop on it pretty fast. But I hope that you will try a couple of these yarns. I think that they are absolutely wonderful, so incredibly soft. All of these, I don't have an issue with texture on any of them. So if you aren't used to working with acrylic yarn, you're used to maybe the Red Heart Super Saver in terms of what acrylic yarns look like, feel like, work up as. These are not that. These are not that. I would say these are kind of luxury acrylic yarns in terms of how they feel, in terms of how they feel in the project, but also how they feel to work with. The one exception being, this is a roving yarn, and it needs a little extra work. It needs a little extra work. It goes from like big to small in terms of the strands, and then you end up with like bunchies. Like, this is the color transition. That's not a tie off, and it just kind of looks, it looks not like what I want it to after putting in this amount of effort. I'll put it that way. Some of these are just, ends that I didn't weave in all the way. But it does like to come out. I mean, I don't know how else to, I guess I could have just simply tied it off and cut it a little shorter, but that's a little annoying. Yeah, it just kind of wants to keep, I don't actually know what that is anymore. Yeah, so anyways, so it just is not quite the aesthetic experience that I wanted. That being said, the colorway is beautiful. I don't think you're going to beat this depth of colors. Again, that being said, ick. Huge ick. I think it ruins the depth and complexity of the rest of this blanket, or the rest of this scarf. So this one we're going to give 3, maybe 2 stars on. I'll try to be nice and give them 3. This one we are going to give a solid 5 out of 5. It's beautiful, it's soft, it works up well. And this one I would also give a 5 out of 5, especially if you use the right size tools. So you got a couple of stars to go try, and one that will be project dependent, but I hope you try some fun acrylic yarns that you actually enjoy. As always, like, subscribe, and let me know if you have any yarns that you want me to check out for you.